Greetings, fashion fanatics. Needless to say, 2020 has been a momentous year of change for all of us, and the fashion business is no exception. One of the largest industries in the world was forced to a near total standstill just 3 months into the new year. From designing to manufacturing and everything in between, all players of the industry saw their livelihoods paused as the big 4 cities of fashion locked down: Milan, Paris, London, and you guessed it, New York. Having once worked in the fashion industry myself, I know what the high-speed pace of the industry is usually like. Exhausting.
So I started modeling when I was 14. Yeah, I was a kid, but it was a lot of fun. So I got to travel a lot all over and live in different places like Korea and Germany and LA. And I worked a lot in New York and Miami. And I also did Fashion Week as a 16-year-old, which was quite a unique experience for a kid, I gotta say. But I know just how tiring and go the pace of the fashion world normally is, no matter if you're just starting out or you're some big-time supermodel, right? So even for the people working behind the scenes in fashion, it's very high-paced. Especially though when you're a new face model or basically a recently signed model, it's super busy because you're constantly running around and networking. You're trying to meet all the casting directors in the city, and you're going to your go-sees or your castings, and you have to have shoots regularly to add to your portfolio so that when you present your book at a casting, they can see how well you photograph. And it's honestly a very busy schedule to manage, and it's hard.
But for the young professionals just taking their first steps onto fashion's runway, this year was especially tough. The industry that is notorious for being the hardest to break into just became even harder as jobs have been sparse and industry newcomers have lost so many opportunities to make a name for themselves. I became curious of what the fashion world has been like for those just starting their careers in 2020. I decided to get the views of those working both in front of and behind the camera. So, after a few negative COVID tests and strict following of the CDC's recommendations for social distancing, I Ubered to the East Village to get my first perspective. I sat down with new face model Viktoria to talk about the realities of entering the industry during a time of such uncertainty.
So I was signed with Supreme in March of this year.
So right before lockdown.
Yeah, actually the week before quarantine I signed with them and went into the office and took digitals. It was really funny.
What was the atmosphere in the industry like during all of quarantine? Were there jobs? Was it shut down?
When quarantine started, everything shut down. Everything was very like, you're staying at home. I think a lot of stuff was pro bono work, and a lot of it was just kind of like, how can we keep the industry alive, but also just kind of like not overstepping the boundary of like the significance of COVID.
When did you notice it start picking back up again?
Probably mid-summer. People started to understand the virus itself more. So like obviously masks are on all the time. When you go to a photo shoot, they make sure that you've been in town for 2 weeks at least. Most places actually offer that they take your temperature.
Besides safety protocols at castings, since starting back up as a model, what have you noticed the difference in castings?
It's a lot more based on personality than it is on body type, in my opinion, which is really great. If someone chooses somebody else, it's like, well, okay, that's because they liked that person better based on their whole person and not because, oh, like my body didn't look a certain way.
I like that. That's interesting. So you feel less competition because there is no competition. There is nobody that's exactly like you. They're looking for the whole individual.
Yeah.
I then took my investigation downtown to Soho, where I caught up with Jasmine Fontina, who helps style celebrities like Zoe Kravitz and Kaya Gerber. I wanted to hear her perspective of being an upcoming stylist whose career plans had to change because of COVID-19.
My career goals were to get a full-time job, one that was salaried and paid. It was, to keep living in my apartment in New York, which I had to sublet because of the virus. My ultimate goal in fashion, has always been to work at like a major publication and, be able to do styling and creative stuff for them. Do I worry that those dreams do get halted because of coronavirus? Yes, that is a concern of mine.
Have you done any work that's a bit digital or virtual, or how are they handling styling these days?
Fittings, now have been over FaceTime. Like, I mean, literally everything is over FaceTime. It's crazy. Normally, like, I would get to see my clients face to face, and with this, like, we literally just go back and forth on FaceTime, and we figure out what works for, you know, whatever event. Everything has been, like, online. Like, I saw, like, the Belmont show, and the Belmont show was kind of all of these people just sitting in the front rows via, like, screens, and it was so strange, like, seeing Anna Wintour just, like, sitting in a chair on a screen.
A fashion show conducted via Zoom? Now that's a sight I never expected to see. But I guess 2020 has taught us all to expect the unexpected. The next fashion insider I talked to knows all the ins and outs of adapting with the times as a newbie in the industry. Zoe Cincus began her career in fashion PR just a few months prior to lockdown. Her fast-paced role involved constant creative collaboration, late-night meetings, going to events, and travel. Very Devil Wears Prada-esque. But overnight, the career she had worked so hard to achieve became unrecognizable.
I never intended to work in fashion, like, at all. I wanted to work, and I still want to work, in music or film and television. I assumed, like, Andy's role in Devil Wears Prada, where I'm like, oh my god, like, a bunch of skinny people just throw on, like, some sparkly clothes, and they look hot, and then they get paid, and they party. It's like Halloween 24/7. When I got my foot in the door and I started working, I realized that it was, like, actually really creative and a lot of fun. Your benefits really do come from, you get to go to these clubs and these parties with an open bar and talk to celebrities and influencers and top CEOs, and you get to go to the fashion closet and take whatever you want home with you. It pays off your 60-hour, 70-hour work weeks.
Okay, so you started your job in January, and it's go, 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 a lot of travel, as I understand. And then how did you get the news that everything was shutting down in March?
So in mid-March, I was homesick for about a week, and that's when I actually had COVID. And so when it was time for me to go back to the office, I called my boss because we didn't know the severity of everything yet, or really what COVID was, and I wanted to be cautious. And so I called her, and she's like, don't even bother coming in. We've shut the office down indefinitely. Like, we don't know when we're coming back.
Your job was super collaborative, though, so how was it having to collaborate remotely all of a sudden?
It's definitely challenging. You're kind of forced to do it by yourself, and then bounce the ideas through an email, or, like, send them, like, a rough outline on something, and then they're like, okay, this is not where I was going at all.
That's crazy, though. Like, I feel like having to share all ideas via email would just slow everything down.
Oh, definitely. Do you think to yourself, like, if I'm working 60, 70-hour work weeks at a job that I'm not really passionate about the industry to begin with, the creativity and the benefits make up for that, and all of a sudden you have that stripped away, it's like, why the hell am I here? Why wouldn't I work somewhere else for the meantime?
So given, like, the current state of the industry, though, would you see yourself wanting to re-enter the industry, or are you completely turned off from it now?
Absolutely not. I mean, I never wanted to work in the industry to begin with, like I said, but I did, and while I value the creativity and the benefits, that's no longer there. The soul of the industry is dead.
Now, I can totally understand why the current state of the fashion world can feel disheartening. Zoe and I's conversation got me wondering if countless creative minds like her are turning away from the industry and thus are creating a sort of brain drain that will likely have repercussions on fashion for years to come. In fact, a study by Brookings Research Institution found that between April and July 2020, nearly 70,000 jobs were lost in the fashion world. That's $4.5 billion in sales. The fashion Bible Vogue even claimed creativity is in crisis. Nevertheless, not all future fashionistas have been swayed in their aspirations.
I still want to do this. I think that it's going to be challenging because there's less jobs available, there's more competition, but it's never been easy for me. Like, it's never been easy for anyone that does what I do in styling to actually get ahead. Like, you have to kind of not be shaken by anything.
Lots of things have changed in the fashion world over the past few months, but some things like patience and dedication never go out of style. And perhaps that's all that upcoming fashion creatives have to keep in mind. With that being said, the doors of fashion are as open as ever, and I, for one, can't wait to see what lies ahead for the industry.